I am 73 years old now, and my hands shake when I hold my morning tea. Not from age, mind you, though age has certainly claimed its share of me, but from the memory that still lives in these bones, the memory of the day I became both villain and victim in my own daughter's eyes. They say blood is thicker than water, but I have learned that money flows thicker than both, and when you turn off that stream, you discover who was drinking from love and who was merely quenching their thirst at your expense. My name is Eleanor, though once upon a time I was Ellie, young and bright-eyed, a girl who believed that hard work and sacrifice would build a castle of happiness for those she loved. I married Thomas when I was 22, and he was a good man, solid as oak and just as silent. We built our life brick by brick, his hands roughened by construction work, mine worn smooth by the endless typing at the insurance company where I climbed from secretary to manager over 30 grinding years. We had one child, Sarah, and oh, how we poured everything into her. Every dream we deferred, every vacation we skipped, every worn coat we kept another winter, it was all for her future, for the life we wanted her to have, easier and brighter than ours had ever been. Sarah was our sun, you understand. When she smiled, Thomas would forget the ache in his back. When she brought home good grades, I would stay up late baking her favorite lemon cookies, my eyes burning with exhaustion but my heart so full it could burst. We sent her to a good college, took out loans we would spend a decade repaying. We bought her a car when she graduated, helped with the down payment on her first apartment. And when she met Derek, tall, handsome Derek with his easy charm and expensive suits, we welcomed him like the son we never had. They married on a spring day when the cherry blossoms were raining pink petals like confetti from heaven. I wore a dress I had saved 6 months to buy, and Thomas rented a tuxedo that made him uncomfortable, tugging at the collar all through the reception. But we were happy, so desperately happy, because Sarah glowed like a candle in a dark room, and we truly thought, that we had done it right. We had given her everything, and she had found love. Thomas died 3 years after their wedding. A heart attack, sudden and merciless, took him on a Tuesday morning while he was fixing the porch railing he had been meaning to repair for months. I found him there, tools still in his hand, his face peaceful as if he had simply decided to rest for a moment. At his funeral, Sarah cried into my shoulder, and Derek stood behind her with his hand on her back, and I thought how grateful Thomas would have been to know she was not alone, that she had someone to lean on. But grief is a strange country, and in my wandering through it, I did not notice how the landscape of my life was shifting. Sarah and Derek visited less frequently after Thomas died. At first, I understood they were busy, building their careers, their life together. Derek had started his own consulting business, and Sarah had left her teaching job to help him run it. They talked about expansion, about opportunities, about investments. And then, one evening over dinner at their house, a house far larger and grander than they needed, Derek leaned back in his chair, swirled his wine, and said something that planted a seed of ice in my chest. "Eleanor, you know Sarah and I have been talking," he said, his voice smooth as butter melting on warm bread. "We think you're living beyond your means. That house of yours, it's too big for one person. The maintenance, the property taxes, the utilities, it's not sustainable. You should really consider downsizing, maybe moving into a more manageable apartment. Something smaller, more economical." Sarah nodded, her eyes not quite meeting mine. "Mom, we're just worried about you. We want you to be comfortable, but we also want you to be smart about your finances. You're living too comfortably for someone on a fixed income." Too comfortably. Those words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples through everything I thought I knew. The house Thomas and I had bought 40 years ago, the house where we had raised Sarah, where every room held memories painted in laughter and tears, I was living there too comfortably. I looked at my daughter, at her designer handbag on the chair beside her, at the crystal chandelier hanging above our heads, at the marble countertops gleaming in the kitchen beyond, and something twisted in my stomach. "I manage just fine," I said quietly. "The house is paid off. I have my pension and your father's life insurance. I'm not struggling, sweetheart." "But you could be saving more," Derek pressed, leaning forward now, his salesman's instincts kicking in. "Think about the future. What if you need expensive care someday? Wouldn't it be better to have that cushion?" I smiled, though my lips felt numb. "I'll keep it in mind." But they did not let it rest. Over the following months, every conversation circled back to my supposed financial irresponsibility. Sarah would call and ask if I had thought more about selling the house. Derek would forward me listings for senior apartments, places with names like Golden Years Manor and Sunset Village, tiny boxes with kitchenettes and shared common rooms where old people went to wait for the end. And always, they framed it as concern, as love, as them wanting what was best for me. What I did not know, what I would not discover until much later, was that Derek's business was bleeding money. The contracts he had boasted about were falling through, the expansion he had planned was collapsing, and they had leveraged themselves to the edge of ruin. They needed capital, and they had been counting on something I had arranged years before, when Sarah was still in college and needed help establishing credit. You see, when Sarah turned 21, I had added her as an authorized user on my credit card, a good one, with a high limit, one I had built up through decades of responsible use. It helped her credit score, gave her a safety net. I had meant to remove her after a few years, but life happened, Thomas died, and I simply forgot about it. She had her own cards by then, her own accounts. But the card remained, sitting dormant in my wallet, a ghost of my earlier generosity. What I did not know was that Derek and Sarah had discovered this. They had found statements in some old paperwork, realized the account was still active, and they had been planning, quietly, carefully, to suggest I give Sarah access again, to help them, through their financial crisis. My house, my savings, my credit, it was all part of a map they were drawing toward their own survival. The confrontation came on a cold November evening. They invited me over for dinner, and I drove through streets already dark at 6 o'clock, the autumn having stolen the light earlier and earlier each day. When I arrived, Sarah's eyes were red-rimmed, and Derek paced in the living room like a caged animal. The air felt electric with unspoken tension. "Mom," Sarah said, her voice breaking, "we need to talk to you about something serious." They sat me down, and Derek laid it all out. The failed contracts, the debts, the creditors circling. They needed money, a substantial amount, and they needed it quickly. Could I take out a home equity loan? Could I co-sign on a business loan? Could I give them access to my credit cards, just temporarily, just until they got back on their feet? I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, feeling like I was watching this scene from somewhere far away. "How much are we talking about?" I asked. $200,000, Derek said, not meeting my eyes. "Maybe more. $200,000. The sum hung in the air like smoke from a fire. I thought of Thomas, of his calloused hands, of the years he spent hauling lumber and pouring concrete. I thought of my own decades hunched over a desk, fighting for every promotion, every raise. I thought of the life insurance money, carefully invested, meant to carry me through my final years with dignity. "I don't have that kind of money to give," I said slowly. "But you could get it," Sarah said, and now she was crying, real tears streaming down her face. "Mom, please, we're going to lose everything. The house, the business, everything we've worked for. You could live smaller, live less comfortably, and help us save our future. Isn't that what parents do? Isn't that what you and Dad always did? Live less comfortably." There were those words again, and this time they came from my daughter's mouth, weighted with expectation and demand. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw a stranger wearing my child's face. When had she become this person who measured my worth by my willingness to impoverish myself for her mistakes? "I need time to think," I whispered. "We don't have time," Derek snapped, and his mask slipped just enough for me to see the anger underneath. "Every day we wait, things get worse. You're being selfish, Eleanor. You're sitting on resources while your only daughter is drowning." I left that night with my heart cracked clean through. I drove home through blurred vision, tears making the streetlights smear into watercolor stars. And when I got home, I sat at Thomas's old desk, the one I could never bring myself to get rid of, and I started going through my files. That is when I found it, the credit card statement showing Sarah as an authorized user. And that is when I understood the real game. I hired a private investigator, a woman named Rita with kind eyes and brutal honesty. Within 2 weeks, she had shown me the records. Derek and Sarah had not just been planning to ask for access, they had already been using the card. Small charges at first, testing whether I would notice. Then larger ones. Over the past 6 months, they had racked up nearly $40,000 in debt on my account, carefully, gradually, thinking I was too old, too trusting, too stupid to check. The betrayal was not the money, though that hurt. It was the calculation, the cold arithmetic of their love. They had been building toward something larger, a grand request that would seem reasonable after they had already taken so much in secret. They would tell me about the debt they had created in my name, frame it as an accident, an emergency, and leverage my guilt and love to extract even more. I sat with this knowledge for 3 days, barely eating, barely sleeping. I remembered Sarah as a little girl, how she would crawl into bed between Thomas and me during thunderstorms, how she would present me with dandelions picked from the yard like they were roses. I remembered teaching her to ride a bike, to bake bread, to be kind and honest and strong. And I wondered where I had gone wrong, what I had done that made her think this was acceptable, that I was a resource to be mined rather than a mother to be cherished. On the 4th day, I called the credit card company. I removed Sarah as an authorized user. I reported the fraudulent charges. I changed my passwords, my PIN numbers, everything. I locked down every account, every asset. And then I called Sarah. "We need to meet," I said. We met at a coffee shop, neutral territory. Sarah arrived with Derek, both of them looking haggard, desperate. I slid a folder across the table to them. "What's this?" Sarah asked. "Evidence," I said quietly. "Of theft. Of fraud. $40,000 charged to my credit card without my knowledge or permission. I've already reported it to the authorities. The credit card company is investigating, and depending on what they find, there may be criminal charges." Sarah's face went white. "Mom, no, we can explain." "I should live less comfortably," I interrupted, my voice steady though my hands shook. "That's what you said. You said I was living too comfortably, that I should sacrifice more, give more. You said it while wearing a $1,000 watch, while standing in a house you couldn't afford, while stealing from me." "We were desperate," Derek said, his voice hard. "We were going to tell you, we just needed time." "You needed my money," I said. "Not my time, not my love, not my wisdom. Just my money. And when I wouldn't give it freely, you took it." Sarah was sobbing now, her hands covering her face. "Please, Mom, please don't do this. We'll pay it back, every cent, I swear. Just don't press charges. I'm your daughter. Doesn't that mean anything?" I looked at her, and my heart broke all over again, but this time it broke clean, with sharp edges that would not fit back together the way they had been before. "You're right," I said softly. "You are my daughter. And that's why this hurts so much. That's why I have to do this. Because somewhere along the way, I failed you. I taught you that love means sacrifice, but I forgot to teach you that sacrifice has limits, that respect matters, that your parents are not just vending machines that dispense money when you press the right buttons." I stood up, gathering my purse. "The credit line is closed. All of them are closed. You are on your own now, Sarah. I suggest you learn to live less comfortably." I walked out of that coffee shop and drove home through streets that looked different somehow, sharper and more real. I have not spoken to Sarah in 2 years. She tried calling for months, leaving voicemails that oscillated between rage and pleading. Derek threatened legal action, but his lawyer apparently told him he had no case. They declared bankruptcy 6 months later, lost the house, moved into an apartment not unlike the ones they had wanted me to move into. I still live in my home, the one Thomas and I built our life in. I tend the garden he planted, I sleep in our bed, I drink my morning tea on the porch he died trying to fix. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh, if I should have been more forgiving, more understanding. But then I remember the look in Derek's eyes when he called me selfish, the calculation in Sarah's voice when she said I should live less comfortably, and I know I made the only choice I could. They say that when you give someone everything, they learn to expect it as their due rather than appreciate it as a gift. I gave Sarah everything, and in doing so, I taught her that my value lay in what I could provide rather than who I was. That was my failure as a mother. Cutting her off was not revenge. It was the last lesson I had left to teach, that love without boundaries becomes exploitation, that generosity without respect becomes theft, and that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to let them fall so they can learn to stand on their own. I am 73 years old, and I am alone. But I am not lonely. There is a difference. In the evenings, I talk to Thomas's picture, tell him about my day, ask him if I did the right thing. He does not answer, of course, but sometimes the wind chimes on the porch ring in a certain way, and I choose to believe that's him, telling me he understands, telling me I am enough, just as I am, without giving anything more away. And if Sarah ever truly understands, if she ever learns what I was trying to teach her, she knows where to find me. I will be here, living comfortably in the home we built, waiting to see if love can grow back after it has been cut down to the root. But I will not wait with my wallet open. That door has closed. Sometimes the weight of words can only be understood when the safety net disappears and you feel the full gravity of what you've said. I showed her that weight. Whether she learns to carry it with grace or is crushed beneath it, that is no longer mine to control.